Hey, it's Chris, Liege with Games. Games that are great, that are worth playing, but games that maybe you don't need in your collection. Let's talk. Now, what we're going to be talking about in this video, it's going to be short, it's going to be brief. I'm going to give you 5 games that I think are worth playing, worth experiencing in the hobby, but not necessarily owning them. Having someone else own them so that you can play them, but not necessarily pay the cost, the overhead, the learning, the having to teach other people them in the first place. And this is going to be divisive. Let me very much put that out there right now. Again, I'm not arguing that these are bad games or you shouldn't have them, but I mean, if you don't recognize this logo, this is Kingdom Death Monster. I own this game. I would argue that you shouldn't own this game. I would argue that I shouldn't own this game. So again, it's the dungeon crawler that has sort of set the standard. It's been the standard bearer since it was first crowdfunded. Well, maybe not since it was first crowdfunded, but when it was first received by crowdfunding backers. It has set the standard for boss battling, not just dungeon crawling, because dungeon crawling is not what it's really doing. It's a narrative combined with a boss battler on which everything else since then has stood on the shoulders of this. Say what you will about some of the miniatures, the art, their grotesqueness, the sexuality that is expressed through many of these things, but I will make the argument here that it's not a game that you need to own. This is a lifestyle game. This is a grind, 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 die, 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 lose your characters, build new ones, don't get attached to any one of them, and then hopefully, through the min-maxing that this game requires, your settlement can maybe make it through the first couple bosses the first time or two, until you actually learn what the bosses do and the surprises that this game basically throws at you without any warning or any knowledge of, which makes you grind to repeat it again and again, consuming hours and hours of your life for a price point that is, boutique at best. Many other terms that could be used to describe it as well. I mean, it was the first pure deluxification boutique game from this aspect with such a price point. It hasn't really been duplicated. It sort of has also become such an acclaimed game, I, again, will say, partially because of the artificial scarcity that is made of this. That so much is being spent on the new stuff over the past decade that the production of things to get this en masse to the wider market really hasn't been, I would say, attempted in that sense. Expansions are constantly sold out. Expansions are constantly going for 2 to 3 times the MSRP or more on the secondary market for the ones in high demand. All the while, miniatures funding, separately, while backers from the latest Kickstarter campaign wait 5 years later, essentially. And again, no one's arguing that it's going to be bad, but the rhyme, the reason, the timing, the order of operations has always seemed wonky to me. And that's going to rile up a lot of hardcore KDM fans, but if we're being honest, that's the truth of things. Again, I have a copy. It's sitting right back there. I've played it half a dozen times at least. But it's a game that's, it's a min-max for sure. And unless you really want to min-max for tens of hours of your life, this game is not for you. And it's maybe not for you to own, maybe just to play once in a while with someone else's copy. That's number 1. Number 2 is going to be a departure from this, but also in the same light, and that's Twilight Imperium. You don't have 12 hours to play this game. You don't have 6 to 7 friends to play this game with on a regular basis. This is a game that is going to be a status marker, just like KDM in the same sense, more than anything else, for the vast majority of owners. And so you have $100 that could be better spent elsewhere, nay, not even on board games that would be more useful for you, or even in the hobby if you really want to go, I would sleeve more than I would buy this game. And I don't sleeve any of my games. Because, again, the biggest thing of my channel is if you can't get it to the table, it doesn't matter how good of a game it is. And you need upwards of 3 to 4 plus people that know this game, that have played repeatedly, that understand it, that understand the meta, that understand the evolution of things, that understand the mechanics and the tie-ins and the asymmetric factions and how everything builds up to a crescendo over a 6 to 8 hour time frame. And again, 6 to 8 hours. Like, I'm married with 3 kids and I play a couple hours a week at most, sometimes every other week. So this is a pipe dream, never forever. Now, again, maybe you need, like me, the Twilight Imperium roll and write, which is coming out in the near future. But again, is this something that you're really better off owning? Or is it someone else's Grail game that maybe you can participate in when the stars align, if you will? So that's number 2. Number 3, this is more recent. This is Return to Dark Tower. Again, I'm not going to argue. Had some playtime with this recently, and I would say this is a solid co-op. It's a solid co-op. But I would argue Restoration Games' piece de resistance of all of the reiterations that they have put out so far, it's a very expensive game that does a few things that are accomplishable because of the tower and the electronics, but overall, nothing that made me go, holy cow, this is new and different, and a wow, does this take it to the whole nother level, or wow, is this doing something completely and utterly unique from a cooperative experience that I've never seen, played, or thought about before. And again, I don't need games to do that, but if I'm going to pay whatever, $140 or $180 on retail right now for this, just like with Twilight Imperium, it's going to be easier to hit the table than either of the other games I previously mentioned. I mean, you can play it in 1 to 2 hours easily, but the price per play, the price of this versus the other things I could get with the money, that factor cannot be excluded. As pretty as this looks. And if you're going to deluxify everything, it's going to cost you, if you want all the plastic down here and all the other miniatures and all that stuff, it's going to cost you even more. Again, you're not talking much less than Kingdom Death size from that aspect, although more accessible and less lifestyle, I guess, if you will. But if you're a fan of co-ops, I think of all the other co-ops you could get for the same price that do things in that much different of way that you can get to the table in just the same sense. The nostalgia is great. The mechanisms are very solid, but I'm very happy to play someone else's copy and not spend my money on this and rather get something else instead. So that's why it's number 3. Number 4 is going to be along those lines. And number 4 is going to be Nemesis. Again, it's Alien the board game, right? From Awakened Realms. But I'll say that, with the meta, with the overhead, not that it's extensive, probably less so than the first 2 easily on this list, probably on par, maybe a little bit even more than Return to Dark Tower. I don't use the term fiddly, but I use the term minutia in this game, of knowing some of the small rules, knowing some of the, if this happens, or if this happens, then this happens, the root effect, where you gotta know all the little nuances and exceptions and, errata that kind of go along with it that make it easy to get to the table, because again, it's a beautiful looking game. It captures the semi-co-op nature of a cooperative game with the alien theme of who's going to complete their objective and who's not, and is the alien gonna capture you and eat you and kill you before you get off the spaceship in the first place quite well. But again, for all it brings to the table, it has felt like to me more of a thematic experience rather than a revelation in, wow, this is that worth it. And again, I'm criticizing myself here too. I'm staring at a copy right behind the camera. So I'm not calling out other people. I'm calling myself out more than anything else, especially with this one. I didn't need this. This was, I have this game. I'm going to be able to play this game sometime in the future sort of piece in my collection. And the accessibility, do you need all the expansions? Do you need the 37 expansions that go along with it? And arguably what everyone says is no. So kind of goes with everything else. Do you need more? More is not better. I think that's the key feature that strings all 4 of these along so far. in similar nature. So what's last? What's fifth? This is a departure. We're going to go Marvel Legendary, right? I see collections being sold all the time. People that have just outplayed it, people that have just gone beyond it in terms of what it offers mechanism-wise or storage-wise or even just total cost. And they go, cost per play is just not there. And you have these 20-plus expansion collections that people are trying to sell for, 50% off. And sometimes they're sold and sometimes they're not. Where this is a game I'd love to play. I'd love to get out, but it's a game that I don't want to pick up, clean up, organize, and put away in that sense. Because at the same time, as much as I love the theme, as much as I love the Marvel side of things, as much as I love what is new and what has been coming out and some of the X-Men iterations and some of the incorporations from some of the villains and heroes that we have never seen, particularly from the comic book, really digging deep there into the trenches of lore, it's kind of been surpassed for the most part by a lot of the other more recent deck builders, doing things in a slightly different, more nuanced, and more unique way. Even with its, 3,700 keywords and phrases and those aspects, it still kind of feels like a slog at times in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the interactions, the semi-cooperative nature that I never really actually want to play because, I'm playing it as a co-op. It's us versus the game, not us versus the game and whoever scores the most points, because if you're worried about point scoring, then oftentimes what I've seen in this game is that then you lead to, rivalry, which ends up losing, especially in the harder games. So again, great game, no qualms about playing it, but somebody else's collection that they've spent more than Kingdom Death Monster on for this game to mix and match ad nauseum, I'd be okay with. So that's it. Quick video, quick thoughts on 5 games that I think you're better off letting somebody else own and having them bring over to your game night to play instead. Obviously, a couple that are going to be controversial, a couple that are going to probably raise the hair on people's backs, but you know what? My channel, my views, my bias, and my conversation. So tell me how wrong I am in the comment section, politely, please. Other than that, smash the like button, let me know what you think, and subscribe if you want. So I'm trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. It won't happen, but, stretch goals for the channel right there. As always, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Stay classy.